Some years our oats are good enough to sell to a processor, meaning they have 36-pound test weight or better, and some years they're not good enough. The years are not good enough to go to the processor. We use them in the hog and cattle rations.
As far as how small grains fit into our whole farm operation, let me just say very, very important because we generally have around 80 acres of oats, and then succotash, which would be oats, wheat, barley, and we put field peas in that combination and combine them all at once, which is nice. You don't have to try to do it separately with field peas. We just do it all at once.
Well, we've grown barley and wheat as well, and we've grown some succotash, so I guess we've grown all three of them together. The barley and wheat can pretty much be interchanged for corn. Barley especially can be interchanged for corn. Wheat, you got to hold back a little bit. But they all make great feedstuffs. The profitability probably isn't quite as high as growing corn when you're feeding it, but if you look at the other things that the oats and barley and wheat do for the farm, it averages out.
So we use oats, for instance, in both the hog and the cattle operation.
The calf feed, we feed whole oats, and because calves will ruminate enough and chew it. As the cattle get bigger, then we start running the hammers just with no screen to kind of break them up, because fat cattle won't chew up the second time oats as well as calves will. The percent of ration is still about 20 to 30% clear to finish. So the main thing to know is that fat cattle need the oats processed partly.
And then in the cattle ration, starting out cattle after we wean the calves, it's generally about 75% oats, maybe a quarter corn. Then we'll gradually change it to 50-50 oats and corn. But we always keep some oats in we'll probably put in 1,000 pounds of oats or rye. This year we've had rye as well because we weren't able to sell the rye. It didn't have a good enough germination for the seed contract. So last year's rye crop we're feeding to our cattle at 1,000 pounds per 4,000 pounds of corn and then 1,000 pounds of rye. But with oats we would be doing the same.
The hog ration, Mark Honeyman's done quite a bit of work with feeding hogs oats, and I think he went up to 40% oats in the finishing ration and had equal gains and equal carcasses.
Now oats, we're feeding heavily in a gestation ration. There we're adding in a 2 ton of gestation, we put in 1,000 pounds of that is oats, straight oats. Only 200 pounds of soybean meal in a 2 ton there.
We probably don't feed much oats until the pigs get up to 50 to 60 pounds. And then we start with 10% and end up at about 30% in the final finisher. And the sows get 20% oats in lactation to 30% oats. And then we don't feed any oats in gestation. I'm sorry, they get the 20 to 30% in gestation and none in lactation.
If we did have pigs, we would be feeding some oats to the pigs. I really liked oats when we had pigs, to get pigs started.
If I was going to raise pigs, baby pigs, every elevator used to have an oat dehauler for baby pig feed. Years ago, when every elevator had a feed mill, everybody had a dehauler because everybody grew oats. They'd bring your oats in and you'd dehaul them, and it makes beautiful baby pig feed. It's highly digestible, easy to chew.
We would actually use them in the farrowing house and then the nursery for the pigs. I know they won't gain as fast in the nursery on straight oats, or not straight oats, but with that fiber in their diet, but it's really a smooth feed. I mean, it's a soothing feed to the gut. Ground oats are. In the farrowing house, there's a lot of fiber in it, so it bulked it up for the sows and kept them from becoming constipated when they were put in a farrowing crate.
For more information on feeding small grains to hogs, you can check out Iowa State University's extension publication on the topic. In this publication, you can learn more about the average nutrient contents of different small grains, how each small grain might fit into hog rations at different growth stages, and potential limitations to feeding different small grains. In addition to growing small grains by themselves, many farmers that feed small grains to livestock grow the crops in combination and sometimes add field peas to the mix to increase protein value. This mix is often called succotash.
We've been growing succotash 3 years now.
Yeah.
3 years. We've used different mixes of succotash. We've had oats, barley, oats, and peas is the first one we started with, and then we've grown that 2 years. And last year for our succotash mix, we went to wheat, barley, and peas. We started growing succotash originally just to get a higher quality feed on our small grain acreage instead of just straight oats.
Higher protein. Right?
Yeah, higher protein, something that would work a little bit better for our hog feed. That's what we were originally growing it for. Now,
we've fed a lot of it to dairy cows.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years, we've fed a lot to dairy cows, and it's worked well. It's higher in fiber, though, which is not always good, but we like it because of the multi-species aspect of it, the different types of roots and different growth habits, and it seems like different years favor one over the other a little bit.
The succotash we generally just use in the hog operation, and the reason for that is that the field peas, if you have enough field peas, which they are typically around 22-23% protein, we can, with succotash alone, you theoretically, if you had, let's say, barley and field peas, because barley is very much equivalent to corn, we could theoretically just feed field peas and barley and not have to have any soybean meal. But what we do as a compromise, we grow the succotash, which has some barley in it and some wheat, a little more oats than either wheat or barley, and then about 35 pounds of field peas an acre. I should give you the pounds per acre seeding rate. It's we go 90 pounds of the oats, wheat, and barley combination, or 2 bushel of, that's equivalent to about 96 pounds is equivalent to 2 bushel of barley. So we shoot for that 96 pounds, and then 35 pounds of peas.
We really like succotash in gestation feed and lactating feed. All our sow feed has succotash in it. Some of our pig starters will put succotash in. Our grow finish we don't put succotash in, but we put the grain component of our gestation feed has 1/3 succotash and 2/3 corn. When we move our sows to pasture in the spring, we'll still keep 1/3 succotash in that, and when we're on pasture, we drop our grain feed back because the sows are eating so much more alfalfa and clover. But we'll still leave 1/3 of the grain as succotash.
When we send our rations in, we generally, to be tested, we've got it figured out that generally we have enough field peas in there that we can reduce our soybean meal by 50% on a grow finish ration. So that's where we use the succotash the most. And we'll put in, let's see here, for instance, in a 4,000 pound grower ration, we're putting in just 350 pounds of succotash. In a finishing ration, we're up to 500 pounds of succotash per ton. That's in 4,000 pounds. And then we're putting in that 2 ton, we use 520 pounds of soybean meal. So in that particular ration, we probably only reduced our soybean meal by about 330 pounds in 2 ton. Because generally it depends on the percentage of protein of your soybean meal too.
Knowing the nutrient content of your grain crop each year is essential to properly balancing your feed ration. It's also important to have a sample tested for toxins. Though there are many potential toxins, vomitoxin and ergot alkaloids are 2 big ones. Vomitoxin can be present in any small grain, but is most commonly found in wheat as a result of the crop being infected with Fusarium head blight. Ergot, found in rye and sometimes in triticale, can cause toxic alkaloids to result in the grain. Both of these, as well as other toxins, can cause health problems in livestock at certain concentrations and should be tested for. Dairyland Laboratories, based in Wisconsin, is one lab that farmers commonly send grain samples to.
You have to know what your succotash protein is, or it's best to know, and then we will balance accordingly. We have been using soybean meal, what we're now going to roasted beans, but we'll still have to balance for protein.
You should get every grain tested for what that year's grain is as far as protein, and like for oats, you can always count on 12 to 13% protein there, I think, off the top of my head. Wheat can be a little higher, up around 14, 15 even, I think 14. Barley's up around 11 or so, I think. All those are in that 11 to 13 range a lot of the time. But that's going to be higher than corn, which is typically only going to be 8 or even less. If you can get 8 to 9, that's really doing well. So on a protein basis, you got a little more protein, plus you got more fiber too in the small grains.
The one piece of equipment that would be tough for farmers who make their own feed to live without is a grinder mixer.
Yeah, we have a grinder mixer. We run it through a hammer mill. I think ideally we'd run it through a roller mill, but we don't have a roller mill, so we're running it through a hammer mill, and we're using a 3/16 inch screen, I think, that we're running it all through. Not as fine. I used to grind it in an 1/8 inch screen, and we got a lot of dust, a lot of powder when we ground it that fine. And sometimes the pigs don't like all that dusty feed, so we ground it a little coarser now.
For hogs, we grind them through the same screen that we grind the corn in. I think it's whatever the size, 3/16 screen. And it takes a little power, but I think it's good to grind them up.
We have a grinder mixer, which is the traditional way that farmers always have made their own rations and ground their own feed, really since about 1960, when portable grinder mixers came to be. And now they're hard to find. There's only one or two companies making them new, and one of those companies is Artsway here, right in Iowa. So we've got an Artsway grinder mixer, which means you have screens in there of different sizes to give you the particle size that you need for your hogs. Especially, you want that size not too small but not too large. There's a micron size that's just right, so that they get the most feed efficiency out of that size of feed particle. And of course, we have a scale. You got to have a scale so you know what you're doing. You're not guessing. There are some used grinder mixers for sale. You really need to look them over carefully because a lot of them are worn out. You need to just kind of get a feel for if there's any obvious loose bearings or bearings that are out, or feel shafts, see how tight shafts are, and how if there's play in the pulleys or sprocket wheels, see how tight everything is and how sharp the teeth are. You'd have to look at your hammers inside the mill itself. There's what are called hammers that are spinning that do the feed grinding. If they're completely worn, the edges are completely worn off, you're going to have to replace them right off the bat, because that's what gives you the size of the grind and the efficiency of what that grain's going to look like after it's being ground. Let's see, what else? Belts, basic things like what are the conditions of the belts? Are they cracked or dried out? Has it been sitting outside? Just basic common sense things, really. Don't worry about paint. Worry about the stuff I've been telling you. Augers, if the flighting is real sharp, that means it needs to be replaced. If you can about cut your finger on any flighting, then you better think about getting that replaced. So, you might buy a grinder mixer for $500, but then you might put in $1,500 into getting it ready. But that's still better than a new grinder mixer like this one. If you were buying it new, it's around $20,000 or more. So at least look for something used to get that cost down, no matter what it is you're doing.
Another reason many livestock farmers grow small grains is because they can harvest the crops in July. After that harvest, they plant multi-species grazing mixes that have plenty of time to grow in the warm August and September weather, providing late-season forage for cattle. Next week, we'll talk with farmers about the cover crop and grazing mixes they plant after small grains harvest.